Supercharged 51 over here. I hope you're having a splendid day wherever you are in the world. We're back in the Motorsport Lounge, back for another podcast, and today we're talking about a very controversial one, by a surprising amount, not the most controversial one of the season, but today we're talking about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And guys, unfortunately I've got no of my Motorsport Lounge members with me, but I've got a special guest all the way from England. You guys on the channel love him. He has been my former league racing partner. Craig, how are you doing today?
Very well. Very well.
You're ready to talk a lot, because you and me both know how much we can talk when it comes to Formula One.
I'm gonna need a new voice at the end of this. Let's just say.
Oh well, without further ado, let's hope both of our voices hold. Let's jump straight into it. Craig, would you please read me the results for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix?
So, in first, we had Lewis Hamilton winning. Second, Verstappen. Third, Valtteri Bottas. After that, we have Ocon, Ricciardo, Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, Giovinazzi, Norris, Stroll, Latifi, Alonso, Tsunoda, Raikkonen, and then the DNFs being Vettel, Perez, Mazepin, Russell, and Schumacher.
Thank you very much, Craig. And the Constructors' Championship standings after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix were Haas Ferrari still in P10 on 0 points, Alfa Romeo Ferrari in P9 on 13 points, Williams Mercedes was still occupying 8th on 23 points, Alfa Romeo actually starting to catch up with Gio and Kimi always sniffing at the back of the points. Aston Martin Mercedes are still in P7 on 77 points, Alfa Tauri Honda on 120 and 6th, Alpine Renault in 5th on 149. Maybe that fight for the constructors for P5 is over between those two teams. We'll have to see what Abu Dhabi delivers. McLaren Mercedes are on P4 on 269 points, with Ferrari ahead of them on 307.5. Red Bull Racing Honda occupies P2 on 557.5, and Mercedes AMG Petronas Racing leads the way on 587.5 points. Craig, just one more thing, please do the Drivers' Championship standings for me, and then let's get into the talking points.
So, in 20th place with 0 points, we have Nikita Mazepin, as with Mick Schumacher in 19th. Followed by Antonio Giovinazzi with 3 points, Nicholas Latifi with 7, Kimi Raikkonen 10, George Russell 16, Yuki Tsunoda 20 points in 14th, Lance Stroll 34, Sebastian Vettel 43, Esteban Ocon 64, Fernando Alonso 77, Pierre Gasly 100, Daniel Ricciardo 115, Carlos Sainz 149.5, Lando Norris 154 for the top 5, Charles Leclerc with 158, Sergio Perez 190, Valtteri Bottas 218, Lewis Hamilton 369.5, and Max Verstappen level on points with Hamilton with 369.5.
So Craig, before we get into the talking points, first of all, thank you for doing everything so beautifully. It's the first time in more than 3 decades we've had a championship finale go ahead with the championship rivals on equal points. To me, that is just, even though there's a lot of controversy we're going to talk about, but just looking at that subject in its own, that's something not just amazing for the sport, but just amazing for us F1 fundies. I mean, it's the first time in my lifetime I've seen something go down like this.
Well, I mean, as you said, it's the first time it's happened in decades. This type of thing doesn't come around very often. So to see this, it is a privilege, a very, very big privilege. And to become an F1 fan, you're being treated very nicely.
Oh yeah, I told all my Motorsport Lounge members, because 4 of them are new to Formula One, they're like new F1 fans, and I told them at the beginning of the season, even before the season started, after pre-season testing, I told them, if there's ever a year to become a Formula One fan, it's gonna be this one. And my words weren't even called after the Bahrain Grand Prix. And I mean, look at what a sensational season we've had. It's been amazing.
Well, I mean, you can't really say that any race was really a ball fest. Everything had something going for it.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, even though the most boring race of the season, as usual, was Monaco, but if you look back at Monaco, the strategic plays in that race, if you looked deeper than just overtakes and, you know, people who want to see crashes, it was actually a very entertaining Grand Prix.
I think Bottas's front left would disagree with you.
I think that literally they built a second car for Bottas because I still don't think that wheel's coming off. But in any case, we're not here to talk about that. We'll talk about all these topics in the season finale podcast. But Craig, let's get into the first talking point, which is a much calmer start than we thought. Even though Perez almost wiped out Verstappen, that's the only big thing that happened. But on the first start of the race, I expected chaos when I saw how narrow Saudi was, and yet the first start was actually very well contained.
Yeah, you look at the track layout, you think it's going to be Baku style starts where everyone's just crashing, there's carbon fibre everywhere, you could go on the track and pick one up and take it home. You'd think there'd be that much carnage on the first lap, especially with the track being as fast as it is and as tight as it is. But yeah, as you said, very, very calm. Everyone got away fairly well. Everyone's unscathed, and it was quite a boring start, if anything. But yeah. It was nice to see the drivers get away unscathed and use their full weight about them to not do anything audacious on the first lap.
Yeah, one thing that I actually want to quote Matt Gallagher on from WTF1 is we've really been treated this year to either exceptional race endings or action-packed race starts. And like you said, the start was actually boring. But the thing is, if we look at a start like that a few years ago where there were multiple overtakes on the first lap, we would have been over the moon. But because this season has been just such a jam-packed action-packed season, we were just like, what's going on? Is this going back to 2020?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it was kind of... I know I said it was a boring start, but in a sense, it was kind of nice to see a boring start for once, where everyone just gets away nicely, there's no dramas, we can settle in quickly for the race. I know it doesn't really give a good precedent for the rest of the race, but because of the track, we essentially knew there was going to be drama at some point. So, yeah.
We didn't expect the amount of drama.
Well... Yeah, the complete flip in drama from the start being a bit boring to then what happened, it completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, absolutely, but we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But just one thing, you just watched the race highlights before the podcast, and the amount of length that Perez had between his front wing and Max Verstappen's gearbox, I think Perez was pooing himself as soon as he started locking up for that first corner.
Well... Perez must have known that he had to be close to Hamilton and Bottas and Verstappen to help in this championship fight, but he was too... Let's say he was making too big of a risk, knowing that he's behind Verstappen. Yeah, he was too eager to get close, and with doing that, he nearly cost Verstappen the entire race.
No, not just the entire race, the entire championship. And even though he didn't run into Verstappen, he still lost the position to Leclerc. So he just made the race so much harder for himself. Yeah,
Leclerc held on very well.
Yes, he did actually. He did. And he kept Perez behind until we had the red flag on lap 13. But we'll get to that in a second. Now, actually, let's talk about the safety car incident. So first of all, just very glad that Mick Schumacher is fine, because that was a very hefty crash. The impact of that was insane. So I'm glad Schumi is all right. But your opinion on Bottas going slow as soon as the safety car was deployed, because obviously Max came over the radio and complained that Bottas was holding him up, and obviously Mercedes communicated to both Lewis and Valtteri that they were double stacking, so we know why Bottas did it, but that to me was a little bit sketchy. I honestly think Bottas should have had a little bit of a reprimand for that.
Yeah, I completely understand it. It's not allowed to slow down, especially when you're double stacking. I can understand him slowing down a little bit, just get a little bit of a breather. But the pace he was going, it was, quote, mind my French here, it was a bit of a piss take how slow he was going.
No, absolutely. No, he was literally crawling. I mean, if you look at the onboard, Max is literally at some spot sitting in second gear, and the car's not revving. The car's basically idling in second gear. He can just as well have gone to first. Bottas was literally crawling around the track. So that, to me, the fact that the stewards didn't look at that was not on. But we're going to have an entire rant about the stewards eventually, because the stewards were probably the most controversial topic of the entire weekend, despite the Hamilton-Verstappen crap that went on.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, but next topic. The thing that to me was a little bit of karma was the fact that even though the red flag was pulled, and me and you both agree the red flag should have came out sooner, it basically bit Mercedes in the butt for holding up Verstappen with Bottas, because as soon as the red flag came out and Max stayed out, he automatically got the lead of the race.
Well, I think if Bottas didn't go as slow as he did, Verstappen would have pit with the Mercedes. I think the reason that Red Bull decided to keep him out was because of how much Bottas was holding him back. Hamilton would have jumped Verstappen, so I think that's why Red Bull kept him out.
I actually didn't think about it that way. You actually bring up a very good point, because I mean the gap between the top three was less than 2.5 seconds when the safety car was deployed, and when Hamilton entered the pit lane it was something like 6 to 7 seconds. So definitely there was nothing that Max would have been able to do to defend against both the Mercedes. I think even Bottas would have been ahead of him quite clearly. So yeah, they forced Red Bull's hand, but then basically the red flag forced Mercedes' hand. And it screwed both their drivers at that stage.
Yeah, whereas Red Bull and Verstappen would have thought we've had to stay out under this safety car, we're at a disadvantage. There was always that looming factor that there would have been a red flag considering the crash and where it was at.
Yeah, but also one thing to me that was very, very interesting is why they didn't keep Perez out, because even Martin Brundle mentioned this in commentary, that why did they pit Perez? Obviously we knew why they didn't pit Max, but if they kept Perez out, Red Bull would have been in a much stronger position due to the red flag. And like you said, there was always that looming idea of a red flag being thrown, and yet they pitted Perez and he came out properly in the midfield.
Yeah, I just think it was maybe a bit of a mistake from Red Bull.
Because we've seen that, obviously we all know for the past few years the Mercedes isn't the greatest in dirty air, even though I think this season it's been a lot better than previous seasons. But Red Bull would have made Mercedes' job 10 times harder if they didn't just have Verstappen in front of the Mercs, but Perez as well.
I think it doesn't really make sense what I'm about to say here, but I think the reason why they might have pitted Perez was because just to put Perez on fresher tyres and maybe have a go at the Mercedes if he could get through other drivers. If Verstappen was, like, say the safety car did continue, they did get going racing again, I think Perez being on fresher tyres would have helped him out a bit.
No, I don't actually think that's a stupid thing to mention. That is a valid point. But at that stage, I don't think anybody knows what Red Bull were thinking at that stage, especially the strategists. But for me personally, as soon as I saw Max staying out, for me it was a slam dunk idea to keep Sergio out. But yet,
I mean, I can imagine they wanted to split the strategy between them, because there was that looming factor that there would have been a safety car. Not a safety car, the red flag.
So no, I completely agree with you, but we've still got a lot to talk about, so I think that topic is done and dusted. Now, the first restart, this is where the controversy just begins. This is like a little taster of it. But
it's fun time.
The first restart was where the crap started, Verstappen and Red Bull. What was Max thinking at that first corner? Literally going off track, blocking Lewis, almost stopping on the racing line when he rejoins the track, and even letting Ocon in the Alpine pass. Honestly, to me, that was pathetic. That was like not even Formula 3 type of patheticness. It was not. That to me was not on at all. I raged when I saw Verstappen do that.
If they were side by side going into turn one, then it's fair that he'd maybe want to break a little bit later, try and defend his position. But Hamilton was clearly ahead, like a full car length ahead, and Verstappen didn't care clearly about what he was doing. He just wanted to stay ahead. It was very, it was a bit desperate in the sense that he was as far behind as he was, and he just decided to completely send it around the outside, go off track, and nearly collide with Hamilton again.
The thing is, going off the track and rejoining, I mean, it's the restart. Everybody is bunched up. I can understand why Verstappen, didn't slow down going off track. The thing that just really made me angry was the fact that he almost came to a complete stop on the racing line and Lewis had nowhere to go. Like I said, Ocon and the Alpine just blasted past, and as soon as Verstappen realized Ocon was going to get past Lewis, he just accelerated away from the corner, keeping the lead, putting a car in between him and Hamilton. And I just literally, it could have turned out a lot worse for Hamilton because there's cars behind you. It could just have easily been somebody running into the rear of Hamilton.
The back of him.
Exactly, and then Hamilton's championship and race would have been over.
Yeah, it was definitely dangerous from Verstappen, it should have been a penalty more than give the place back.
Yeah, the fact that he didn't get a penalty for that incident to me already speaks volumes about where the stewards' minds were this weekend. But yeah, that was just that didn't sit well with me. And like I said here, he literally skipped turn 1 and blocked Hamilton into turn 2 to let Ocon pass him. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record repeating myself, but it's literally something that I've written in my notes on my script. That isn't on. You can't do something like that in the sport, which is the pinnacle of motorsport. I'm sorry. It's, to me, that is moves that actually legalize a race ban, in my opinion.
I maybe wouldn't go as far as to say a race ban. Definitely needed some type of punishment. At that point, you're just not wondering what's going through Verstappen's mind, the lengths he'll go through, to stay ahead.
Now, one thing that we all, as Formula One fans, know is Verstappen is one of the hardest drivers to pass. It's just a known fact. He defends for everything he's worth. But like you said, that turn 1 move was kind of desperate, and then he just races dirty. This is not a Wreckfest open lobby where you can just yeet people off track and stuff. It's the pinnacle of motorsport. It doesn't sit well with fans like me and you and people that appreciate the sport for what it is.
Well, I mean, Verstappen would have known that as soon as Hamilton got ahead, Hamilton was just going to breeze off into the distance. The straight line speed of the Mercedes in the second and third sector, Verstappen wouldn't have been able to do anything. We saw the entire weekend the Red Bull was unreal in the first sector. He was able to keep Hamilton behind when Hamilton was behind. So essentially Verstappen knew he had to stay ahead, and that's why I'm saying it was desperate, because, well, yeah, even though the result never changed, Verstappen didn't want Hamilton winning because it would have affected the championship.
Very, very true. And I think Verstappen's, I think his worst nightmare would have been to go into Abu Dhabi either on equal points like they did, or trailing in the championship. So that I can understand from Max, but I still don't think it's a valid reason to drive so immensely dirty.
I mean, I think another factor that comes into this is, even if he took Hamilton, if they both went out, it wouldn't have essentially mattered to Verstappen because he was still leading the championship.
True.
The championship would have been over at that point, essentially. Because he would have kept his lead.
I don't know, that is a definite factor. I think Max went into Saudi not caring if he and Lewis collided, as long as Lewis was out of the race. But it's there's a lot of stuff to talk about, so I think we'd rather move on before I absolutely explode of frustration. But the one thing, I wrote this topic about earlier, but this is concerning the second incident, but I'll come back to this topic. So let's move on. Now, the crash between T3 and T4 was intense, which involved Perez, Leclerc, Russell and Mazepin. Now, like you said when you watched the race highlights, Perez unfortunately had nowhere to go. He had Gasly on his outside and Leclerc on his outside and Gasly on his inside, and he just got sandwiched.
Yeah, nothing Perez could have done. It's just very, very unfortunate positioning. I think Leclerc did very well to minimise his damage, but in the same vein, there was a Ferrari in between the wall and Perez's car, but it was just very, very unfortunate positioning, and I think Leclerc did well to minimise the damage of his car.
No, I love how you...
It was inevitable, basically.
Yeah, it was unfortunate and inevitable, but I love how you're taking two topics and heading it out of the park, because basically the only damage Leclerc had on his car was basically that right front tire, which the rim had a bit of damage after the contact, but he didn't lose his front wing. He didn't even make contact with the wall on his left, which he was a few millimeters away from. And once again, that was just the reactions from Leclerc in that moment was phenomenal. It was just honestly something to behold.
Yeah, basically. Couldn't have said it better.
And then the Mazepin rear-ending Russell was the biggest scare of the whole crash. I mean, Mazepin literally went underneath Russell's Williams, and I can remember when they showed the first replay, even the commentators went like, whoa. Didn't see that part of the crash because everybody was focusing on Perez's car, which was going sideways. But that was a monumental yeet, and I'm actually glad that Mazepin and Russell could have walked away from that, because that could have ended a lot worse than it did.
Yeah, Mazepin's not at fault there. He couldn't react fast enough to what was happening. He applied the brakes. I'm pretty sure he just went into the back of Russell, because Russell was also reacting to what was happening. Very, 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 very unfortunate for both drivers, and again, we've got to be thankful for the halo for that.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely, because it's basically the nose and the halo of the car that stopped Russell's car just going over Mazepin's car the wrong way around. We just need to be thankful that both drivers are okay. I am a little bit sad that Russell's race ended that way, because George had very good pace throughout the weekend. After Hungary, the Williams has been a bit lost. Once again, it went back to the 2020 Williams where it was just nowhere. But throughout practice and even qualifying, Russell was going fairly well, and he nearly got out of Q1. He was 16th. He was the last driver not to make it. And with the first race start, he came up to P13 and was busy battling with Alonso, Vettel, and Raikkonen for those positions just outside the points. And looking at all the DNFs we had, I think if Russell wasn't involved in that, I think Russell even could have gotten points for this weekend.
Yeah, very possible. It was nice to see Russell get a good start off the line. We've seen it, the trend over the season has been, even when Russell qualifies fairly high, the Williams just has a really bad start. I think just has a bad start sequence on it. But it was nice to actually see him move forward instead of backwards.
Yeah. No. I think without the crash, Russell would have had a very, very good weekend. But we'll see what Russell got in the driver ratings later on. And now here is where the ranting will properly begin. I think we're going to be like Katie Fairman on WTF1 from both of us. But the stewards were the definition of pathetic this weekend in Saudi. There's just no two ways about it. I'm sorry. And I'm talking about the obviously we had a red flag after the whole crash with Perez, Leclerc, Russell and Mazepin. And why the bloody hell did Michael Massey try to negotiate with Red Bull? And also, like Craig said, excuse my French, but that's absolute bullshit.
I mean, it is. We've never seen this before. We've never seen negotiations happening. I mean, even when the FIA radios came in at the beginning of the year, even throughout the entire season, we hadn't seen negotiations happening. We had no idea that. I mean, the teams made it seem as if like this was just normal. But I mean, we have no idea, because before this year we'd never had these radios, so we have no idea that that was even a thing. But yeah, it was very, very strange to watch actually negotiating. Like you take what we're giving you, or we're gonna put you in and let's talk.
No problem.
Yeah, take what we're giving you. So Ocon pole, Hamilton second, Verstappen third, or we're just gonna direct you to the stewards, basically. Yes.
Now, look, Craig, the thing for me is, like, obviously we didn't have these radios, obviously before this year, but looking at the previous race director, Charlie Whiting, there was never this, the teams having this much say. If Charlie Whiting, if you were at fault and he gave you a certain penalty or he said something, you listened, or you knew there were going to be reprimands. It's as if Michael Massey, or as they call him, Michael Sassy, just doesn't have a backbone, because you can't negotiate. Max is clearly at fault for going off track and gaining an advantage. It's not, do you want to get behind Hamilton and Ocon? It's you get behind Hamilton and Ocon, or you're getting a more strict penalty. Your choice. It's not a negotiation. You're the race director. Your responsibility, first of all, is the safety of all the drivers and all the marshals around that track. And when penalties need to be given because somebody is clearly at fault, you give them, and not try and let them have a decision in their punishment. That's like when a kid breaks a plate on purpose, then you're just like, okay, do you want one spank or no spanks? Obviously the kid's gonna choose nothing. You can't do this. That to me is just where the patheticness of this entire situation started. And it's not just Red Bull. We've seen it throughout, I think, ever since the American Grand Prix. We've seen it. Mercedes, even Alpine tried to negotiate with Michael Massey. And him as the race director, that shouldn't be allowed. This is what you did wrong. This is your punishment. Take it or leave it. If you leave it, you're going to get something worse. End of story.
Yeah, still true. Michael Massey just hasn't really, like you said, have a backbone this entire season. He's too easily influenced by the teams. We need someone in there who has, who can put their foot down and say to the teams, this is what's happening, you're not going to change my opinion. Yes. If it's a bad call, it's a bad call. It's my decision at the end of the day, not yours. And when he comes over the radio, he's just like very, very calm, like, okay, Toto, yep. Okay, Christian. He's dead calm. And I think in a way the teams take advantage of that, especially Red Bull and Mercedes. They see that, Michael Massey's just like, yep, okay, we'll look into it for you. Yeah, okay. And they just think they can go on the radio, scream at him, put him under pressure, and he'll essentially bend over backwards for you.
Eventually,
but that shouldn't be the case. He's a race director.
No, I totally agree with you on that. You as the race director, you don't get pushed and shoved by anybody. If you really want to take it to this anatomy, you're the bully. If you really want to go to that extent, you're not the one that's supposed to be bullied. You are the bully. If things happen, that is the action, and that is what's followed. But I mean, if you're looking at the entire stewards regulations, I mean, and Katie Femin has said this on multiple occasions this year from WTF1, the entire sporting regulations of Formula One needs to be rewritten, because first of all, there's too many loopholes that the teams know about that they can throw in Massey's face. And second of all, when they do that, he just doesn't know what to do. It's as if he's relying on his team and not him making the final decision. And yes, the team is there to support him, I understand that, but he has the final say. And this can't be happening at this level of motorsport.
Well, I completely agree. It's nice to see that, next year that this stuff is being eradicated. I think there does need to be some team involvement, mainly in conditions like wet weather, and if genuine safety is of concern, then I think teams should be allowed to intervene and make their concerns, and then it's up to the race director to make the calls, the appropriate calls. But when it's just racing and it's all like, oh, but he's done that, oh, but he's done that, oh, tell him off, he's you can't do that. It's racing.
Exactly.
It's completely understandable. Like, for example, Sebastian Vettel in Spa saying, we need a red flag in qualifying. 2 minutes later, Lando Norris is in the barrier.
And that was a hefty crash. Lando could have been seriously injured.
Yeah, so I completely understand if things like that is, still there. Like, if genuine safety is of concern, then I don't mind, teams getting involved and like going over the radio and saying, look, we need this, we need that, because genuine safety is of concern. But if it's just for racing, no. Just no.
No, Craig, I totally agree with you, and please, not just you, but also the viewers as well. Don't understand me wrong. I understand that the teams do need to have like a little bit of interference, and they need to be able to talk to the stewards, but not to the level where the race director needs to jump through hoops, if you know what I mean. He's the race director, and obviously the teams can communicate, and even if there's an incident and it's a regular race, if there's truly a reason to complain, go for it. But the race director is not supposed to be bullied. And like you said, if the wrong decision gets made by the stewards and the race director, appeal it after the race. We've seen, especially this season, there was appeals from the start of Bahrain till the end of Abu Dhabi. There was appeals the entire season by multiple teams, not just Red Bull and Mercedes. If the wrong decision is made in the race, which Charlie Whiting made a few wrong decisions in his time, appeal it after the race. You've got that loophole at least. Appeal it after the race and see what happens.
Yeah, if you genuinely feel like there's been like a bit of foul play, essentially, like someone's went against you, but you've been basically absolutely smashed by the stewards for maybe something that you didn't really do, or it wasn't as deserving of such a bad penalty, then yeah, you can do that. You can appeal. You know, I think that should stay because wrong decisions can be made by the stewards. We've seen plenty of them this season. But if something like a 5 or 10 second penalty is given out during the race and you're immediately over the team radio screaming and saying this is wrong, just get in the bin.
Yeah, that situation Michael Massey needs to
take it on the chin for now, deal with it later. You're racing at the moment, you've got a job to do.
Exactly. That is where I feel Michael Massey needs to say, okay, for instance, Christian, this is what we analyzed, this is our decision, we can talk about this after the race, let's finish the race first. And that's that.
It's not mature in any form. Because it's like going up to the teacher at school and just like nitpicking and screaming that, you know, someone took your pencil.
Yeah, exactly.
It's childish.
No, that I totally agree with you on. And actually, when I said that in one of the previous podcasts, my Motorsport Lounge members actually disagreed with me. But I'm glad you agree with me, because to me, it is childish. Once again, and I know I've said this multiple times this podcast, but you're at the pinnacle of motorsport. Sometimes stuff is not going to go your way. That's part of life. Appeal it afterwards, but don't bitch and moan over the radio like a grade 2 girl because something didn't go your way. If you really got the car to win that weekend, prove yourself on track.
Exactly.
So, and look, I know Mercedes have had their fair share of complaint sessions this year at the stewards, but
same goes for Mercedes.
But for me, Red Bull have been the ones that they completely take the cake and the cherry on top. Mercedes complained when they needed to complain, and I'll admit there was 1 or 2 occasions where I think, okay, you guys were a bit pathetic, but Red Bull and Christian Horner and Helmut Marko this season, honestly, I've lost all respect for Helmut Marko. You know over our WhatsApp chats what my opinion is about Helmut Marko. But even Christian Horner, a man that I honestly respected so much and that I looked up to, after this season, I'm completely off of the Christian Horner train. Not like completely. I didn't even wait for the station. I jumped off mid movement.
Well, I mean, I've never really liked Helmut Marko at all, just because of the way he just threw his drivers under the bus. Like I know that he's essentially doing what's best for the team, like trying to find who can be as close to Verstappen as they can be. But it just seemed like if you weren't within 3/10 of Verstappen, you were going to get the boot.
Exactly.
But with Christian Horner, I've always said, up until the end of this year, I always said, look, the guy does what he's got to do. He's always he's trying to fight one of the most successful teams in Formula 1, and he's doing what he's got to do to try and win. I've always respected him in that sense, but this year they have had a car that's capable of winning, and on many occasions faster than the Mercedes, and he was still complaining.
And the thing
even
is,
when he was in the top spot.
No, exactly. And the thing is, if you look back at Vettel's dominance from 2010 to 2013, Christian Horner never did this. And with all honesty, when at certain tracks this year, when the Red Bull was quicker than the Mercedes, it was quicker than the Mercedes. Mercedes could 9 times out of 10 not touch the Red Bull.
Well, look at Austria.
Exactly. I mean, you even thought at that stage of the season that the championship was over, and when they were faster, Mercedes couldn't touch them, and he still complained. Back in the early 2010s, when Vettel, the Red Bull was fast, don't get me wrong, but Ferrari was in the mix, McLaren was in the mix. There was so many teams that was so close to the leaders, and you never heard this type of thing from Christian Horner in interviews or anything. He was cool, calm, he was like Toto Wolff is now. But now that they've got this little golden boy, number 33, it's as if he's just drank a PMS pill. Sorry, I know that's very rude, but it's as if he's drank a PMS pill.
Ouch.
I know that's very rude, but that is honestly how it feels to me. And I'm not trying, I hope to God that Christian Horner does not watch this podcast. With my luck, he will view it, but not the point. It's honestly the way he's reacted in certain situations this year. That is the vibe I've been getting. I mean, you and me both. We are recently out of school, and to me, it was like those childish girls in high school when their periods hit. That is how it felt to me.
Well then, nah. I just think the level of complaining has just been a bit unnecessary. I think Mercedes, when something goes against them, they in a way just put their heads down, just get on with it. See, they if anything focus on the future and how they can improve, or they can limit damage. But it just seems like anything went against Red Bull, they were screaming over the radios, trying to get decisions overturned, and yeah, it was just a bit more it was just childish. Like I understand Toto and Mercedes have also had their fair share of complaining. And, you know, this does apply to them as well. It is pathetic. If you genuinely feel hard done by, you can appeal it. Just do that. If you have solid evidence to prove that you're right, then why be so angry? You should feel like, if you have the evidence to show that you're innocent, you should surely have the confidence to just, okay, we'll take this on the chin now, but we'll show you that you're wrong later on. I mean, you're during a race at this point, and you've got to focus on what your driver's doing and what your team is doing, rather than what the stewards are doing.
Exactly.
If you take a penalty, at that point, you work your absolute hardest to try and work that penalty off, in a way like Hamilton did at Silverstone.
Exactly. I literally just wanted to use that example. Hamilton was forced to take, what was it, a 10-second stop and go penalty, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was just 10 seconds,
yes.
No stop and go involved.
Okay, so, and he still managed to catch Leclerc, which when he was leading, the Ferrari was actually very pacey. I mean, neither Bottas nor Perez could get close to him, even though Perez had a terrible weekend back at the British Grand Prix, not the point. But Bottas and the two McLarens were there, and at that stage of the season, the McLaren was the quicker car between Ferrari and McLaren. They couldn't touch Leclerc, and Hamilton still made sure that he got past Leclerc with a few laps to go and still extended the gap.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
And that is when Red Bull's car was still considerably quicker in qualifying, and they still had a slight advantage on race pace, not much, but that was when Mercedes started catching up. But the Red Bull at that stage was still the quicker car, and I just it doesn't sit well with me when especially a team principal like Christian Horner rants on a radio like a 12-year-old girl. I'm sorry. It just doesn't sit well with me.
Well, something that very, very, very much annoyed me was obviously the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which this podcast is based on, not the Silverstone Grand Prix. We're getting a bit off topic. Was just the whole, like, just the same three words. It's just racing. It's just racing. It's just racing. What Verstappen was doing, it wasn't just racing.
No, it wasn't. Absolutely not.
So.
No. But we'll get to that also in a bit. Let's actually try and move on.
It just seemed like if they were the ones making the aggressive moves, it's just hard racing. Yeah, if Hamilton was to have been in Verstappen's position, he was the one forcing, completely going off track and cutting the corners to stay ahead. I'm fairly sure Christian Horner would have been on the FIA team radio screaming, saying that that's not right, it's illegal, it's dangerous driving.
No. That is a fact. You don't even have to think twice about that.
But because
that is an absolute
Verstappen was
fact.
the one doing it, it's just hard racing. I mean, I've heard many things that that's just the way Verstappen drives, he's a hard racer. That shouldn't be an excuse.
No, and that's completely my point as well. That is not an excuse at all.
It's not an excuse to just dismiss his driving style. It's like, at the first restart, just completely, he hardly even brakes. Obviously, brakes enough to get through turn 1, but then just completely cuts across and cuts Hamilton off. That's not just hard racing because it's Verstappen. At that point, there's a line, and
exactly.
He didn't just step over it; he jumped over it.
He yeeted over it.
And I'd be saying the exact same thing if it was Hamilton doing that, but he doesn't do that. Hamilton's been the one avoiding action the entire race.
Frickin' hell, the entire season. Nevertheless, the race. I know we're talking about Saudi, but I mean, Verstappen has been the aggressive driver this season, and Hamilton has been the one avoiding action left, right, and center.
It's been, I can count 5 times, maybe even more, but just off the top of my head, 5 times if Hamilton didn't take avoiding action, them two would have collided. Another 5 times. It's crazy, and it's always been Verstappen the one who's, making the move, not Hamilton. Like, it just seems like when Hamilton's aggressive, it's calculated aggression. Just look at Brazil, for example.
Oh yes, absolutely.
It's calculated aggression. Whereas Verstappen, it's just, okay, I'm sending it up the inside or outside or wherever. If we crash, it's your fault, it's up to you.
Exactly. And that's
it's a Senna mindset.
And look, even I'm not going to talk about this for a long time, but I mean, obviously in Senna's time there weren't these strict rules and everything, but even Senna himself had the guts to admit when he was wrong. It didn't happen a lot. He was also a very freaking tough bastard to crack, but when he was wrong, he admitted it. I've never heard Max said when he was at fault for any incident, I'm sorry, this was my fault.
Well, at the end of the race, when he got driver of the day, he said, oh yeah, at least the fans know what racing is. That wasn't racing.
No, not at all. No. It's clear that we've talked about this a lot on WhatsApp, Craig. It's clear that the new fans to Formula 1 support Verstappen because that is what they think racing should be. The proper OGs like us who know what Formula 1 and just racing in general, good, clean, proper, wheel-to-wheel racing is. We support the drivers. Even if we're not fans of them, we support the drivers that race like they should.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong, Verstappen is a hell of a driver, right?
Oh no, same here.
He is exciting to watch. He will send it down the inside when no one else will. But there's a line to that you've got to draw, like when is it okay to do that and when is it not?
Exactly.
And it tends to be he doesn't know where that line is, he'll just send it up the inside anyway. And yes, I mean, just look at the second restart, for example. Ocon, pole, Hamilton second, Verstappen third. He sent it up the inside, made a brilliant move, made it stick. It was unbelievable.
Didn't make any contact.
Really good move. He didn't make any contact. It was a really good calculated move. That is the type of stuff I like to see. Not just sending it down the inside, going wide yourself and sending your rival off the track. That isn't racing, that's blatant.
Yes, that is.
But that overtake on the inside at the second restart, clinical, brilliant.
No. That is actually, and I literally freaking well done. The Verstappen, that's the type of Verstappen moves that we like. And like I said, there wasn't even a bit of contact. The contact was between Hamilton and Ocon. No contact from Verstappen's side. Made the corner properly, not just on the narrow shell. He made the corner properly, and he got the lead. That was good, clean racing. But that's the only good thing he did this entire weekend. And now basically, after that whole sequence, there wasn't really much happened except for Lewis overtaking Ocon literally on the same lap. But now let's go to the lap 36 defense, where for the second time in the race, Verstappen tried to force Hamilton off the track, but overshot, went wide himself, and just kept driving.
Well, it's Brazil 2.0, isn't it?
Exactly, and this is where I actually put that previous topic in a little bit too early. The penalty for that later in the race was totally deserved. He didn't even try to make the second corner, he literally just yeeted it over.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the complaining from the fans about the steward inconsistencies was of the fact that Brazil wasn't penalised, yet this was. But I think going from Brazil to Abu Dhabi, there was clearly a clarification on what was allowed and what wasn't, and in the end it was basically made out that if you do that you are going to get penalised, and that is what happened. No,
and it just, once again, Lewis, like you said while you watched the highlights, the Mercedes was rapid in a straight line, and Verstappen weaved a bit, nothing too dangerous, but he still defended the inside line, and after Lewis was more than a car length ahead of him, he just didn't brake. Like I said, he didn't make the second corner at all. He just completely drove over it.
Yeah, and in doing that, Hamilton had to take avoiding action. Yeah,
exactly. Again. And yet, even in taking avoiding action, Hamilton still made the corner.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I've seen a few things that Hamilton wasn't going to make the corner anyway. Well, he was on the trajectory to make the corner around the outside cleanly, yet there was a Red Bull in his way. So that's why he also went a bit wide, but still made the corner. Like, I think half of his car was past the white line at that point. It was wide, but he did make the corner, whereas Verstappen didn't.
No, Max is driving this weekend. Look, I know I said earlier in the podcast that certain incident deserved a race ban, and I think that was a bit harsh, I'll admit that, but Verstappen's driving at Saudi. The entire race itself, to me, honestly deserves a race ban. And I know a lot of Max fans, the new fans, are not going to agree with me. But if you've got somebody who's watched Formula 1 for more than 2 decades, well, I think more than 3 decades, Tommy from WTF1, who's a die-hard Max Verstappen and Red Bull fan, even he said, in his opinion, that Max deserves a race ban for the way he drove.
Yeah, just... we'll talk about them soon, but every incident was just bad driving from Verstappen.
Exactly.
And it basically went to that mindset of, I will do anything to stay ahead.
Exactly.
Literally anything.
And I mean, just while we're talking about the whole race ban scenario, the next incident, the Verstappen brake check. Now, Craig, I want your opinion on this, because a lot of people I've talked to completely see it differently. But when Verstappen started slowing down, if you go to Lewis's onboard, Verstappen was weaving. When he eventually saw Lewis was going to the to the right-hand side of the track, he moved right and didn't move. Now, obviously, I get there, Lewis maybe should have gone left. But the thing that bothers me about this incident, first of all, Max weaved as soon as he started slowing down. In Lewis's mind, if I was in Lewis's shoes in that scenario at that moment, I wouldn't know where Verstappen was going. So I'd fallen behind him, and all of a sudden, he just brake checks you. I don't think there was enough time to go to the left, even if there was enough space.
So there's definitely two sides to that argument. One being, why didn't Hamilton just fly past? You know, you see your rival going slowly, you see that there's a chance to overtake. Alright, I'm taking this position, bye. You know, it's in a sense, why didn't Hamilton do that? I mean, I was thinking that to begin with.
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, what the hell are you doing? But as well, Hamilton sees Verstappen going dead slowly. You know, there's no one else in front of them, there's no one behind them. Could Hamilton be thinking, crap, is there a safety car, like a virtual safety car, what's going on? And because he sees Verstappen beginning to weave, he's slowing down. You know, could he be thinking, shit, is there a safety car? I'm going to slow down myself. It's just his dash wasn't saying anything or anything like that. But yeah, it is a weird one, because don't know why Hamilton didn't just fly past, but Hamilton also knew that it was right before the DRS line.
Before the final corner.
Yeah. I do think that's initially why Hamilton stayed behind. Because Verstappen was told to hand the position back strategically. That being in a place where you will have a chance to have another go.
Yes.
But the thing that I don't understand is, why did Hamilton stay in line with Verstappen?
No. I also asked that question, but to me, once again, it comes back to Verstappen weaving when he started slowing down. I don't think Lewis just wanted to go up the inside because he didn't know what Max was going to do. Because literally...
Well, I mean, the entire race up until that point, Max had been driving very sporadically. And
exactly.
Very unpredictable. So I can imagine from Lewis's point of view, aside from like maybe thinking there might be a virtual safety car or anything like that, you know, he's thinking, what the hell is Verstappen doing?
Exactly.
So I can understand it at that point, and essentially at that point it becomes advantage for Verstappen because he's in Hamilton's head. But in the same way, you know, anyone's going to be like that if you're driving very sporadic. You know, you are going to take more caution if that's how they're driving for that race. But in terms of the actual brake check, it is very clear that Verstappen put on a lot more brake pressure and moved.
Exactly.
Which is not allowed.
He literally stamped on the brakes, and as soon as Lewis hit him, just put the throttle back down.
Yeah, wasn't it like 2G of braking force?
Exactly. Yeah, if you go
quite a lot.
If you go watch the video on the YouTube channel, The Race, they literally had they got a piece of the telemetry. Verstappen literally almost applied maximum brake pressure, and literally in less than half a second after Lewis made contact, Max was almost 100% back on the throttle.
Yeah.
Half a second later, he was, I think, at something like 85% throttle. That to me is intentional. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That to me is
I
intentional.
can imagine Verstappen was getting very, very frustrated. He's trying to let Hamilton pass, but Hamilton isn't going past, and so he's just, you know, he's essentially like, he's just, oh, for God's sake, and just slammed his brake pedal, you know, thinking, Lewis, just go past, type thing. But Lewis wasn't having it, and yeah, they collided, and I have no idea how both of them got out of that.
Oh no, that's another thing to talk about. The fact that both of them were still able to finish the race is a miracle within itself. If you take that incident to any other track or with any other drivers, the driver from behind in Hamilton's shoes would have lost his front wing completely, and the driver in front would either have gearbox damage or a puncture. Either one of the two.
Well, Hamilton's right side of the wing took attacked. It was just very times like you could breathe on an F1 car and there'd be carbon fibre that flies everywhere. Just a testament to the build quality of them, and there should have been more damage. There should have even been damage to Hamilton's front right.
Exactly.
It was a hefty hit. You know, it wasn't as if they were going like 2 miles an hour and it was just a little dink. You know, it wasn't like that. It was a proper hefty hit, and I'm surprised Max's gearbox was still alright, considering the shunt it had received the day before in qualifying.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that, and just see, I know it's not in the topics, Craig, but I mean, even you are somebody that appreciates a proper lap. Until Max's incident, to me, honestly, that was the quali lap of the season. That
for me,
it was amazing.
Yeah, for me, it's up there. I mean, apart from the mistake at the end, you watch that lap. It's like Scale Electric's cars.
Exactly.
Honestly, unreal. Just following the path, following the racing line, on the absolute limit was an unreal lap.
The amount of space Max leaves between his tires and the walls. I mean, even his exit coming out of T2. Even the commentators asked live on commentary. Did he touch the wall?
Back like, oh, is he really? Oh, you know. Yeah, it was definitely a spectacle. I think if he had completed that lap cleanly, it would have been lap of the season, I reckon.
And it would have been a for sure pole position, because the Red Bull was just like you said. It looked like a Sky Electric car. It was insane. And the only lap this season that I can honestly, out of my opinion, put on that level is Lewis's pole position for the sprint race at Silverstone.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
That lap from Lewis at Silverstone.
I was going to say the exact same thing, because Hamilton was under pressure that weekend. He had to deliver it. Yeah, for me it's on the same level. Well, I wouldn't say on the same level with that, but if I had to put one close, that lap at Silverstone definitely would have been a bit up there.
The onboard of that lap, and I mean at that stage of the season, like all the viewers and my fans, and even you know, I'm neither a Hamilton or a Verstappen fan, and at that stage of the season I was still in my neutral zone. I didn't care really who won. I only went to the Lewis side at the end of the season due to Max's dirty driving. But even me, I think I watched that lap. If it's 10 times, it's not enough. I watched that lap over and over and over again, because
it
that
deserved
lap,
a nod of the head every time.
Exactly. Because
fair play. Fair play.
Nobody thought that weekend that the Mercedes was going to touch the Red Bull after we had France and the 2 Red Bull Ring weekends. And yet Hamilton comes out and gets pole position by nearly 0.3 of a second after not once in that entire quali session being hello, I've arrived.
That it gives you an extra 0.2, so...
Oh well, he had 2.5 tenths, so he got a 0.5 tenth in himself. But in any case, we're not here to talk about the British Grand Prix. It's the second time we've gone there, but in any case, the Max's lap up until literally the final corner was absolutely stupendous. And honestly, once again, I'm gonna pull Christian Horner and Toto Wolff into the situation, because as soon as Max hit the wall and came to a stop, when the cameras went to Toto Wolff, you could see Toto was honestly sad for Max's behalf. He didn't go on the radio or he didn't do a fist bump and he was like, yes, Paul. He just took off his headset and just looked away from the camera and walked away. And in other stages,
I think everyone could appreciate how good of a lap that was. Like, no matter how biased you are to one driver, you can't look at that lap and just think, man, it's mediocre.
No.
Everyone can appreciate that was going to be one hell of a lap.
Yes, but the thing is, if those roles were swapped, do you honestly think that Christian Horner would have done the same?
No, not a chance.
And that, to me, once again, for that, I dip my hat of respect to Toto Wolff. With everything Max has said and done this year, on and off the track, for them to not even, have a little bit of a reaction on that. Obviously, if they had a reaction, it was off camera, but still, live on TV, he actually was sad for Verstappen's behalf, because, like you said, anybody with 2 brain cells in their head would have known that was basically, if that lap would have been completed, a perfect lap.
Yeah, it would have been a perfect lap, and he would have been on pole by, what was it, like 0.3.
Exactly.
He would have been on pole, if you factor in the time he was making up in the 3rd sector at that point. But Mercedes, I think, knowing that they're behind, getting pole position, knowing that they were, in a sense, lucky to be in that scenario, I just don't think they were going to get ahead of themselves, knowing that they're going to be on pole when Max is a threat no matter what.